What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more PGA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel, this time for the 3M Open. In this video, we will analyze the top 10 plays in our data-driven Occupy model for the 3M Open. We will look at what industry projections are telling us for who will be the highest owned players in our GPPs on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Then we will look to the betting markets, see if there is any action this early in the week to help determine who we can play and who we can avoid in our DFS lineups. And we'll close out the show with a live lineup build where we will hand build a lineup for a DraftKings tournament contest. Welcome, I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. I'm joined by our PGA DFS analyst, Niromada, for the final time this year. This will be the last PGA video of the season. We appreciate all of you coming along for the ride. Nero, happy final PGA video.
Yeah, man, first of all, it's been a lot of fun to record these videos. So thank you to you for giving me the chance to do it, and to the audience for watching and listening along. It's great to be able to come in and talk about my golf views for the week every week, and have people that are actually listening and appreciating what's being talked about. So that's great. So thank you to everyone. And just, yeah, it's 2 weeks until the playoffs for golf. So you really only have these last 2 weeks of regular season contests. The playoff contests are, decent size, but soon enough, there's contests are going to get shrunk down for football season. So this is really like the last gasp of the year for PGA DFS.
That it is. And thank you, Nero. We appreciate you. And for those of you out there watching, you've been along for this ride for most of the year, go ahead and drop a comment showing your love for Nero, for him stopping by every week to give his takes. We appreciate it. So show your appreciation in the comments. So, Nero, before we get into the model for the 3M Open, I do want to quickly recap the Open from last week. And, we got some comments about Colin Morikawa and Nick Taylor. Believe me, they hurt our lineups as well. But I want to just kick it to you really quickly to get your take on PGA DFS and building single entry lineups, or just building one lineup in general. Because if you look at last week, you look at the model, 8 of the top 10 players in our model made the cut. The 2 that didn't were the ones that people did not like, was Colin Morikawa and Nick Taylor. But I will say the top 10 of the model is usually separated by a couple percentage points, and that eventually turns out to be 1 or 2 golf shots out on the course. So looking at who's number 1 versus number 3 can be a minimal difference. But Nero, if you're playing one lineup, unless you're playing the smallest contest possible, it's really tough to play PGA DFS.
It is the most brutal DFS sport to play. It has the most variance of any of the sports themselves. Again, my opinion. And you're already playing an extremely variant game in daily fantasy. So you're just stacking the variance on top of the variance. And so, yeah, I think last week, if you played a single entry and you were just listening to this video, you're probably going to play one of Morikawa and Taylor, if not both of them. And if you played both of them, you lost. And if you played one of them, you probably still lost. So, it's just really, really tough. The only way that you can cash consistently, not win consistently, but cash consistently in PGA DFS is to play low risk contests. So cash games, double ups, 50-50s, that kind of thing, and really small contests. And we're talking like 20 or less entrants in those types of contests, because in those types of contests you can get 4 of 6 guys across on your cut line, and you can still cash. In big contests, even in like a single entry contest of say like 1,000 entries, getting 4 of 6 across in a regular week, forget it. You're not cashing in that contest. But in a contest with 15 players, yes, you might still be able to cash. So yeah, it's a tough way to go. I think that's why most PGA DFS players who play at a significant volume play more than one lineup, and they play a variety of contest sizes from the smallest all the way up to the biggest.
That is exactly right. And Nero, I've seen you play in 10 mans, 8 mans, 5 mans, and I've seen you have success, sometimes even with 3 out of 6 making the cut. So again, it's all about contest selection if you're going to only play one lineup. I know everyone out there wants to win the biggest prizes possible, but if you have one lineup in a contest of 500 players or more, you nearly have to be perfect, where this is not necessarily the case when it comes to a really, really small contest. And again, we'll be the first ones to be transparent. If we have a bad week, we will tell you guys. And Nero, I'll just bring up the daily plug really quickly, where you track every single one of your picks every single week since 2020. So if there's anyone who's going to be transparent, it's going to be you in the plug.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you're not going to see this level of transparency on any other site. And, there's no real perfect way to track it. What I'm tracking there really is a player's salary gives them an expected fantasy point total every week on DraftKings. That's what I'm using as my basis. And so all I'm tracking is when the week is over, did the player that I highlighted in the plug get over or under their expected fantasy points for the week based on their salary. So I think it shows, first of all, long-term profitable picker of players. By the way, that in itself not good enough to be a long-term profitable player in DFS. And if people tell you otherwise, they're lying to you. So that's just the kind of transparency that you're going to get around here. You're still going to need to get fortunate. You're still going to need to run hot at just the right time in the biggest contests when you have a lineup that has a chance. But yeah, you're not going to find a more transparent place than Occupy Fantasy.
And on that note, let's transition and let's talk about the top plays in our model for the 3M Open. Our model looks at which characteristics are important to succeed at a course. And a 3M Open, we've had quite a few events here since they remodeled the course for PGA Tour conditions. So Nero, as we go into it, and this is one of the weakest fields that we will have all year for a PGA event. And now we look at it, and as we look at the top plays in the model, number one and number two this week, and if you're a PGA sicko, you probably know these guys. It's Kevin Roy and Rico Hoey. So not the most expensive guys in the salary pool, but Roy and Hoey. Nero, talk to me about these two guys.
Yeah, well, Roy's been playing pretty well lately. But by the way, so as Rico Hoey, we take one further step back. You're the week after the last major championship of the year, and you're 2 weeks away from the start of the playoffs. So most big name players, this is their week to take off, and they're probably taking off next week too. The big name guys that are in this event, they need the points. They need the FedEx points either to make the playoffs, get in the top 50, get in the top 70, make some criteria jump so that they have more guaranteed status for next year. If anyone can afford to take this week off, they're taking this week off. So that's why you see the field strength that you have. So I'll start with Hoey, who was eighth last week in the opposite field event at the Barracuda, and one golf writer that I read said gave a textbook example of what it's like to lead a golf tournament on Sunday because he was leading the Barracuda starting on Sunday and dropped down to eighth, just played really poorly compared to the field, but still eighth, 34th, 11th in his last three starts, and he's really top 15 in just about every single metric that we look at for this particular event. Roy also in very good recent form. He's top 20, top 30 in ball striking and off the tee metrics that the model has deemed important this week, and he's seventh in scoring. We've played him a few times over the last couple weeks in the plug and talked about him on these shows. So not too much of a surprise to see him pop up here in an event with this week of a field.
Next, number three and number four in the model are two Occupy model favorites for the entire season. These guys always seemingly pop up towards the top 10, top 20 of the model. It's Keith Mitchell, one of the better golfers in the field this week, and it's Doug Gim, who is priced at 7,300. So you look at three of the top four golfers this week, priced under 8K. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think Mitchell would be one of, like you said, one of the bigger names you're going to see in here. Always does well in a lot of models because he's usually up in the ball striking stats. So, and he's a top 20 off the tee, top 20 in ball striking. Gim, maybe a lesser version of a Keith Mitchell. He's top three in approach and ball striking, and in a few of the off the tee metrics, he's also in the top 10. Again, both these guys struggle more so with their short games than with their long games. Their long games are better than most of the players in this field. I think Gim would probably be playing in here, but Mitchell would definitely not be playing in this event if he didn't have to. So he needs the points and he needs the high finish. So two players that I'm definitely interested in this week.
And that could go either way, right? Like guys need the points, and we don't know how that pressure is going to affect them. They could play out of their minds to try to get those points, or they could fold under pressure. We've seen both ends of that spectrum in recent years with guys towards the end of the season. Next, I'll go three straight guys here, Nero, and you can talk about them. 5, 6, and 7 in the model is Carson Young at 6,600. Next, it's Kurt Kitayama at 8,700, and it's Lee Hodges, former winner of the 3M Open, at 7,700.
Yeah, Carson Young, another player who played well last week. So he was 17th at the Barracuda, missed the cut at the ISCO, another opposite field, and then was fifth at the John Deere. So that's fifth and 17th in two of his last three starts. He was also 13th back at the Myrtle Beach Classic. Again, another, basically opposite field event. So again, in these weak field events, he's showing a pattern that he plays pretty well. So certainly interested in Carson Young. Kitayama, again, another one of the bigger names, I suppose, in this event. Very good ball striker, so no surprise to see him near the tops of the ball striking and the approach stats. One of the better drivers of the golf ball in this field, so no surprise to see him near the top of the off the tee stats. I believe he's getting the negative putting regression, not the positive putting regression. So that would be maybe he's why he's not at the very top of the model. And then the last one you mentioned, Lee Hodges, again, like I said, former champ and top five in the approach and ball striking stats. So again, another one that we shouldn't be surprised to talk about. We didn't really talk about the course too much, and we don't, in these videos, but it's par 71, 7,400 yards. So length is helpful. It's not mandatory, but the biggest thing is on 15, I believe, of the 18 holes, water is in play. And it's not just like a random creek running down the side of a fairway or something like that. It's like a giant lake in front of a green or some other, like a real water hazard. No surprise because we're in Minnesota, I suppose. But yeah, water is like the main defense of the course, which is why you see all of the players that are very good ball strikers getting near the top of the model. Because again, go back to our variance sandwich as we were stacking it earlier. So you've got PGA DFS super variant, golf itself as a game super variant. Play a course that has a ton of water on it, even more variance because your score that was going to be a 5 is now an 8 because the shot that you missed that would have just been in the trees or in some deep rough is now in the water and you have to take a penalty stroke and you have to drop and all the things like this is one of the more variant weeks on tour. So it's a good week to take a shot on some of these no name guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like you said, it's going to be extremely variant. So no better time to lean into lower ownership players. And as we talk about what the model is looking for this week, it does take into account how players have performed on these water heavy courses, how far offline guys hit their tee shots and the approach shots, distance from the target. And it's picking up on a lot of the same types of guys. And it's also interesting, as you've been pointing out, Nero, and the model is picking up on this, guys who have performed at the Barracuda last week, at the John Deere a couple of weeks ago, uh, most of these guys in the top 10 have shown top 25s in those events. So that's just an interesting little tidbit that I've been picking up on. Finally, Nero, to close out the top 10, it's Taylor Pendrith, it's Joseph Bramlett, and Ben Coles, guys all of a variety of characteristics and strengths and PGA Tour success.
Pedrick's one of the more accomplished pros in this event. No surprise you see him up at 9,400, right? So he's the sixth highest priced player in the field. He did miss the cut at the Open Championship, but the week before he was 13th at the Scottish Open. And he's got a number of high finishes: 12th at the Memorial, 5th at the PGA Championship. Just going back over his last 6 or 7 events. So clearly, quality player, very good ball striker, good off the tee. So he's, theoretically, he's a pretty good fit for this event, and he was fifth here last year. So lot of positives in Pendrith's favor, and likely will be pretty solidly owned because of those things. Then you got the two lesser accomplished players there, Joseph Bramlett and Ben Coles. Uh, Coles is kind of one of the more well-rounded players, kind of like a Rico Hoey. He's like top 20 in 4 of the 5 metrics. I think we had Hoey as like top 15 in every metric. But Cole's a little more well-rounded. Bramlett a little bit more in the ball striking approach. So real real good with his irons, top 20 in a lot of those metrics, and also in one of the off the tee metrics. Good week, like I said, to lean into both of those two, who are inconsistent at best. But this is a week to take shots on some of the inconsistent players.
I mean, so someone like Bramlett, right? So we got miscut, 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 showed signs of life at the Barracuda last week with a T45. And so as we talk about this for people out there playing one lineup or a couple lineups, is someone like Bramlett who's going to be extremely low owned, someone you want to play in your single entry? Nero, probably not, right? Just because of the inherent risk that he presents with his profile. If you're playing multiple lineups, definitely someone you want to include in your player pool. So it takes a little bit of knowledge of a player's profile to determine, even if they're top 10 or a model, do you want to include them in your single bullet shot this week if you're only building one lineup?
Yeah, I mean, if I had written up Bramlett in the plug, I would classify him. I classify all the players that I write up. I would classify him as like a high risk, large field only type of play. And when you look at that Barracuda, you see that he shot 76 on Sunday. So he was well inside top 15, top 20
Yeah.
starting on Sunday. Probably no surprise that he was uncomfortable on Sunday, considering he hadn't made a cut since May 11th at the Myrtle Beach Classic,
Didn't
where
know what
again he
Sundays were
finished
like.
13th. Yeah, he forgot what Sundays were like. He's like, oh yeah, there's more pressure on these. I forgot what this felt like. And again, another player who has in the weaker field opposite events was he 13th at the Myrtle Beach in May, third at the Puerto Rico Open in March. Like, someone who in horse racing, Brian, as you know, they call this like dropping in grade. So when he drops down to a lower field, lesser field, probably has a little more confidence, maybe feels a little bit more comfortable, has a tendency to produce these low finishes in these weak field events. But yeah, absolutely, someone I would never play in low risk, someone I would never play in a contest of 20 guys, 50 guys, 10 guys, whatever. I'm only playing somebody like Bramlett in a contest that has at least 1,000 entries and probably more like 5,000 entries and above.
Really astute observations there and really good context on a play like Joseph Bramlett. Now let's look at what the industry projections are telling us. We've done this every single week, dating all the way back to the century in January. We look at what other PGA industry projections are telling us. And by looking at these, we know for a fact who's going to be higher owned in your smaller GPPs, in your high dollar GPPs. And again, if you're playing less than $3 contests and pros aren't playing, you know that these guys are pretty good plays. You can probably just stick most of them in your lineups. But if you're playing against pros, you're playing above $3 where pros can enter. Just be mindful that these players will be higher owned. And Nero, a pretty interesting phenomenon this week that normally we break this down between DraftKings and FanDuel, but it looks like all the industry values, quote unquote, are the same across both DraftKings and FanDuel. So who do we have this week?
Yeah, so got across both sites Sam Burns, Maverick McNeely, Siwoo Kim, Akshay Bhatia, Christian Bezadenhout, Bo Hostler, and Andrew Putnam. And like you said, Brian, usually we have some specific values. Did notice that DK's pricing is pretty suppressed this week, so the cheapest, their most expensive guys are pretty cheap this week. So the top price player, Sam Burns at 10,500. That kind of mimics FanDuel's pricing a little bit more, where FanDuel just simply doesn't make the top end guys as expensive as they should be, which is why it's easier to make kind of all-star lineups or easy stars and scrubs lineups on FanDuel, and it's kind of the same this week with DraftKings. So perhaps that might explain, at least potentially, one reason why we don't have any like site-specific values this week, and the values are the same across both sites.
Yeah, and the only difference this week, stars and scrubs, generally on FanDuel gets you Scotty and Rory, where this week Stars and Scrubs get you Sam Burns and Maverick McNeely. Not as safe of a feeling by sliding those two guys in immediately.
Yeah, stars and scrubs this week is more like scrubs and scrubs. So that's what you got if that's what you're going for.
All right, let's move on to the betting markets. Nero and I, we analyze three sharp sports books every week that are known to take sharp golf betting action. And we monitor every golfer's odds to win from the time the lines open Sunday night all the way through the tournament beginning on Thursday morning. And if a golfer's odds to win have improved at all three sharp sports books, we know that multiple sharp groups, multiple sharp bettors, multiple sharp bookmakers are respecting sharp action, and these guys are pretty good DFS plays. Now, we don't have any of these trifecta plays, is what we call them, just yet. But Nero, we have 5 guys that have moved at multiple sports books so far. Their odds to win have improved. That is, who are those 5 guys, and is there any common theme among them?
Well, the first one is your favorite player to play at this event, Eric Van Rooyen.
Can I just can I
Brian and I have a
can I tell
go
the
ahead.
people about this? Like, I had a
Yes.
really big ticket a couple of years ago, and I believe it was a 4K milli, and I used Eric Van Rooyen in my lineup. And I think because of some of the subjective factors, right? He's from this area. I think he went to school in this area, and it was just a really good fit that week. Got positive betting market action. And Nero, he must have hit 30 balls in the water the first 2 rounds. I've never seen a more frustrating performance in my entire life. And so anytime there's water on a course, Nero and I always joke about the EVR performance at the 3M Open. So he gets a chance to redeem himself here, Nero.
He does get a chance to redeem himself. You are correct. There's a lot of subjective factors in his favor. He did go to school at Minnesota. His wife, I believe, is from the area, so he's got a bunch of family ties on her side to this area. And his record at this course is not good. 3 missed cuts and 1 made cut, and that was a 58th in 2021. And he shot 75, 74 here last year in 2024.
Probably because he gets in the
But
water every time.
probably because he loves the water. However, if you believe in the subjective factors and then you were paying attention last week, you finished second at the Barracuda and was up at the top almost the entirety of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So he played under the gun, played well, hit the ball well. You know he wants to do well this week, hasn't done it in the past. But because of that early line movement and how he played last week, I'd be willing to play him on some lineups. Once again, large field, high risk only due to his poor course history and the fact that the two of us have watched him very closely at this event for 4 years straight, and he does seemingly hit the ball in the water quite a bit. But yeah, I think he's worthy of a large field, high risk dart throw for yourself. Other 4 players, so you got Davis Thompson, solid, very good on off the tee and ball striking. One of my golfing boyfriends, Michael Bjornsson, also same as Thompson, very solid off the tee and very solid with his ball striking. Bjornsson is also in outstanding form, like current form. Let me look it up. He is 14th, 21, 4th in his last 3, and then 41st, 54th, 33rd, 4th, and 2nd, going all the way back to Corrales back in late April. So he's missed a few events in there with some injuries, but that is 8 straight cuts. So for people who have followed my golfing boyfriend, George Warrenson, as I've written him up in the plug multiple times over the last couple of years. 8 straight missed cuts is not something that he usually does. So, but we do see this actually with young professionals. In fact, we saw it with one of my other golfing boyfriends, Chris Goddard, earlier this year, who found back in March through, basically now, but he started making cuts all the time. Some wasn't always high finishes, but he stopped missing cuts. He started making cuts all the time. And then what happens these last 2 weeks? Like the best golf of his life, wins the Scottish Open, had a chance at the Open Championship, like just, insane stuff. So when you see these young, talented guys who all of a sudden figure out how to stop missing cuts and start making cuts consistently, it should be a signal to you like, oh, I need to pay attention. Like this guy might have figured it out. And if he's figured it out and he still retains that super high ceiling, like look out, could be time to go on a run. And then the last 2 are David Lipsky and Jesper Svensson. So Lipsky, good iron player, like top 25 with approach. Svensson also good at the ball striking and some of the off the tee stuff. And again, like we've talked about multiple times, high variance week. Any excuse we can find to play some of these low owned players, like we should take it and we should play them. Doesn't mean we have to go crazy. But again, someone like a Lipsky or a Svensson, you get 8 or 9%, 10% of that guy, you're probably already going to have 2 to 3x the field, and you don't need any more than that in your player pool.
That is exactly right, and a really great connection there between Goddard and Thorbjornsen. Let's see if Thorbjornsen can capitalize and start getting into the top three in winning, like Goddard has done the last couple of weeks. And you mentioned EVR's course history. I will say that this course is probably middle of the pack when it comes to predicting this in terms of course history leading to future outcomes. So just because EVR has hit the ball in the water a bunch so far in the last 4 years, doesn't necessarily mean it'll be the case this year. I'm not sure I'm willing to pay to find out, but it does not mean if you look at course history for a particular guy here, it is not a death sentence if they haven't played well. So far, we've seen many guys miss cuts here and go on to win and even finish in the top 10. So just something to keep in mind. Now, Nero, as we close out the show of the final PGA video of 2025, again, if you guys have liked this video all season long, make sure you drop a comment, let us know, show Nero your love. Nero, typically we talk about the weather, and we can just keep this extremely brief before we build our GPP lineup. But it looks like the weather is mostly calm all 4 days, and we don't have to spend much time talking about it, right?
That's right. Especially across Thursday and Friday, it looks exceptionally calm. Almost no wind whatsoever. I think it's going to be hot and humid and like not a lot of wind. I'm guessing it's not going to be super comfortable for playing, especially wearing pants. But like I think the scoring condition is going to be pretty easy. They have had a good amount of rain in the run up to this event, so and they're going to have to water the greens to keep them alive just because of the heat and humidity. So they've got no choice there. Like I think it's going to be a point and shoot birdie fest, likely winning score in the low minus 20s if I had to make a guess.
And as we talked about the scoring metrics that the model is looking at this week, it is looking at easier scoring conditions based on this weather report. So just another level of transparency for you wondering what's going into the model. So Nero, as we build our GPP lineup here, 500 players, 1,000 players, hand building a lineup. We usually use our lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy, but we also hand build from time to time, especially in super small contests. And the strategy that we use, the progression is who is the cheapest player we feel comfortable using. That level of comfort varies from week to week. We look at which guys are overlapping in our various systems, whether it's the betting markets, the Occupy model, your daily plug, ownership, whatever it may be, and then keeping that ownership in mind as we're building the lineup from spot one through spot six. So, there, if we start from our first line of strategy, who's the cheapest golfer we feel comfortable with. We have Carson Young at 6,600, who's top 7 in the model. I'm not sure if he fits the bill in your eyes for this type of contest. And we also have a variety of guys in the low 7Ks, and because of the softer pricing and because of the top end guys not being as expensive, this is probably the route I would feel more comfortable going, playing someone like Kevin Roy at 73, someone like Doug Gim at 73, guys who rate favorably in the top half of the model.
I was surprised you didn't say Eric Van Rooyen at 7,200,
Shocking.
but otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, I agree with you. There's also some quality players that, you know, are obviously not consistent, but like someone like a Chris Kirk at 7,100,
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense to me. Why is Victor Perez 7,100? That also doesn't make sense to me. So, but yeah, I think for the purposes of this thing, I think starting with Kevin Roy at 7,300 is a great way to start and set that as our floor. And unless we come across something that we just love, some combination we love up top that we feel like we need to get that in order to go back down below where Roy is.
Yeah, I like that. And typically, our next step is are we just going to play Scotty Scheffler? Scotty is not in the field this week. So you look at the top narrow, Sam Burns and Maverick McNeely, which our model prefers McNeely over Burns. Got her up. I imagine has to be fatigued in some way after a first and a third and traveling back from across the pond. Wyndham Clark in contention last week late. Stressful, strenuous Sunday for him. And then Ricky Fowler played last week. So I guess my question to you is, if you're hand building this, are you going to pay up for one of Burns, McNeely, Goddard? Are you going to build a hashtag balance build here with some of these 8, 9K guys?
Yeah, I think in our contest sizing that we're usually building for, somewhere in that 500 to 1,000 entries, maybe a little bit above. I'm really like that balance build mentality because none of those guys up top scare me. For something below that, less than 500, especially in that 10 to 20, 30, 50 entrant range, I'm probably playing Burns or McNeely on that. So for this lineup, I would be fine actually to stick Taylor Pendrith in there at 9,400. He's up near the top of the model, and that leaves us 8,300 per player for the last four players. Lots of stuff we can do there, and we can just leave it at Pendrith. And again, pending what we get in that last one or two spots, we might decide to go grab another expensive player. But I don't think I feel the need to do that
Yeah, I
for
think
this
that's
one.
fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. And it's a really good way to approach this week in hand building a lineup, especially for this contest size. I really liked your connection between Thorbjornsen and Goddard. I'm going to stick in Thorbjornsen here at 8,500. We'll see if he can become a full trifecta play by Wednesday evening, which, by the way, if you're a member of Occupy Fantasy, you know this, but we post the final trifecta plays in the Daily Plug Wednesday afternoon and also in our Discord server Wednesday night. So we'll see if Thorbjornsen can get there. So 82.26 left per player after those three guys. And Nero Rico Hoey fits this golf course to a T. Number two in the model would be number one if not for Kevin Roy's putting variance tag. I really want to stick him in as well. So that leaves us 8,500 left per player after slotting in Roy, Pendrith, Thorbjornsen, and Rico Hoey.
Yeah, I think that's a great start. It's a great way to look at it. I mean, I think there's really only one correct way to finish this build off, Brian,
I'm listening.
and you know what it is. You just don't want to do it, and that's to take Luke Clanton at 8,100 and round out my golfing boyfriend status, and then take Jake Knapp at 8,900. The other way you could finish out this lineup, which is also something that you don't want to do, would be to take Van Royen at 7,200, and then you have Wyndham Clark at 9,800 that you could take, and you'd be in great shape. Either one of those two final ways to finish it out.
Yeah, and the nice thing is with the flexibility of the pricing this week, there are a variety of routes you can go for this final two spots, and we can leave it up to you. And again, we're not necessarily saying play this lineup. We're just showing you the path, how we would build a lineup, the structure of how to build a lineup like this. We get a lot of people actually messaging us saying your lineup didn't cash last week. So yeah, well, we have more information to digest by Wednesday, and this is just the exercise of showing you how to build a lineup. We're not necessarily playing this lineup unless Nero and I really like it, and oftentimes we will. In the video, we'll press stop recording, and then we'll say, "Damn, that was a pretty good lineup. I think I'm going to play that one." So there are lots of ways to play it this week, and it looks like a lot of good options that our viewers can take into account.
Yeah, I think there's not only is there a lot of good options, there's a lot of variance. So it's could easily be a very frustrating week to play. Like you got to know that going in and accept it. But the one thing I do like about weeks like this is there's not only freedom with the players, there's freedom with your roster construction
Yeah.
because you don't feel constrained by having to pick Scotty up top. Sure, you can create a build, excuse me, that has Burns and McNeely or Burns and Goddard up on there. Fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But you don't have that pressure where you have to at least have some of those types of builds. I really don't think you need to have that this week. So you should have a ton of freedom, not only with your player selection, but also how you decide to put together your rosters.
Yeah, I think freedom is the perfect way to describe it. So that'll close out this video. Again, drop your comments, love for Nero, and then I want you to drop a comment for every water ball EVR hits this week. You see him, you're watching Shot Tracker, you see him hit in the water, drop a comment below. Let us know that you're also feeling the pain. Any questions, we're happy to answer them as well. You can also drop a comment here on the video, and I will answer them before the tournament starts Thursday morning. Daily Plug, Occupy Model, Lineup Builder, Trifecta Plays. All that is available for as low as $7 per week at OccupyFantasy.com. It includes all sports, and that's an important it's an important fact because NFL preseason starts next week, our most profitable time of the year. The next 4 weeks in August. The reason we stopped doing these PGA videos, the reason why our MLB Daily Plug stops, is because our entire staff puts their heads together to focus on NFL preseason. One of the best times of the year for DFS, and we look forward to having you at Occupy Fantasy. So for Nero, I'm Brian. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you so much for watching this entire season. We weren't sure how a PGA DFS video series would go, but you all have responded favorably, and we appreciate you for that. And we're looking forward to 2026 PGA DFS already. So for Nero, I'm Brian. Thank you, and good luck at the 3M Open.